First thing I'll ask you to do, because I need to be, I'm out of practice as well because I had to work so much last year, so I feel quite rusty with it.
Right, okay.
But I've done a few recently, so I'm getting back into it. So first thing I'm going to ask you to do is just say your name for the recording. So, yeah.
Mark, really?
Excellent. And then I'll kick off with the first question, which is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
What did I want to be when I grew up? I certainly didn't want to be a bin man or a composter, and that's what I've ended up becoming. I wanted to be a fireman. Yeah, classic, 7-year-old dream to be a fireman, and that was it. That didn't pan out.
Did you pursue it at all, or did you just lose interest?
I didn't. It was the way that school and growing up just kind of panned out, and it's something I've noticed with school, bringing up my own kids as well. Is it's very much you go to school, you do GCSEs, you do your A levels, you go to university, and then you get a good job, you get the big house, you find someone to marry, you have kids, you do this. It's all mapped out for you, and at no point does anybody say, "Well, you're going to be a fireman," unless you drop off that path. So I tend to find that if you're on that university path, anything that's more that way inclined, whether it's the army, the fire service, or trades, for example, you only tend to get directed that way if you look like you're not going to go on a university career.
Yeah.
So I kind of forgot about it, really, and then I had a conversation with my dad. He was in South Africa and lived over there, remarried, had kids, and was paying for my rent and accommodation because I was lucky enough to get a grant at university. And I said, I don't know if this environmental stuff's for me. I might just sack it all in and become a fireman. And he said, "No, I'll be really disappointed if you do that. I don't want you to do that." so there ended that dream, and that was it.
So what did you study at uni?
So I did environmental monitoring, so it was a lot of physiology, chemistry, biology, that type of thing. And then there was one module which was on environmental management systems. And then when I was working for Yorkshire Electricity in their sales team, someone found out, said, "You've got one of these, newfangled environmental degrees." And I said, yeah. He says, "Oh, right. Well, we need ISO 14001, which is an international environmental standard, similar to 9001. It's a quality system, basically. Do you fancy putting this in place and getting us the badge?" And I said, yeah, okay, fine. Bearing in mind my degree was one tiny module on environmental management and everything else was science-based. This had absolutely nothing to do with what I did at university, but it got me into the sustainability area, because once I got ISO 14001 for Yorkshire Electricity, as it was then, it was then taken over by Empower. I then worked for Leeds Beckett University, and I've been their was their sustainability manager for 21 years. And I left in December to do Plate Compost full time. So it was a bit serendipity, really. It was I didn't really have a plan after university as to what I was going to do. And what I did at university was science-based, and what I've done, and now it's kind of come full circle with the composting, because there's actually an awful lot of science involved in that. So eventually it has come around to being useful for me, but in the last 21 years it's more been about strategies, it's been around quality systems, objectives and targets, management, all those types of things.
All the bureaucratic side of it.
Yeah, pretty much. But also skills like marketing skills, because when you become a manager, you are just that. You are a manager. I'm not a sustainability person, although it says sustainability manager. And a manager is someone who has got to coach and lead people, a teacher, you're a marketing person, you're an HR person, you're a finance person. You've got to do all of these different things that when I first went into the work environment, I thought other people did. So I thought finance, funnily enough, the finance department would look after finances. Well, no, actually it turns out when you get given a budget, you have to manage that and be able to manage a budget and do spreadsheets and all that sort of stuff. So it was interesting. It gave me a lot of skills which have been useful for starting up my own business, Plate to Plate. So I understand how raising a purchase order works, I understand why you have a purchase order, and I understand the accounting systems behind that, very basic but understanding, but enough to be able to run the businesses and my finances, hopefully, touch wood, properly.
Yep.
Haven't been audited yet, so it must be going okay, I think. But then also about people management, about sales and getting into social media and all that sort of stuff. So, but then now to do the composting, being able to understand the science behind it, being able to understand the chemical definitions of it, NPK, nitrates, phosphates, potassium. I've kind of slipped into that quite easily, and it hasn't been a really steep learning curve for me, although I don't claim to know everything there is to know about the biological and biochemical processes of composting, but I know the basics and I know enough to be able to explain to people how it all works. So, totally, complete serendipity, really. And 21 years later, that degree's finally coming useful. So, brilliant.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 16, and to my guest, Mark Warner. This is another in-person interview and was recorded in Eat Your Greens, a busy cafe in town, as you can hear, and was recorded on the Rode Wireless Go 2, recorded on the 15th of February 2024. Hello, listener. So this has actually turned out better than I expected. That you can actually hear the chat at all was a big surprise to me. I didn't think we'd get anything. There was so much noise around us. The Rode Go 2 is the bomb. It's still not easy to listen to, though. Also, copyright-wise, there is also obviously copyrighted background music that can be heard, so this episode cannot be for commercial purposes. Also, Dan from Eat Your Greens still needs to come on the show. You said you would, Dan. Let's do it. Mark Warner runs Plate to Plate Compost. Plate to Plate Compost is a small Leeds-based business employing people with learning difficulties, supporting the community of Leeds and producing a general purpose quality compost that is 100% organic matter, peat and chemical free. There are two parts to his work: waste food collection service from homes and businesses in Leeds, and selling a general purpose compost made from waste food that is ideal for your garden, allotment or potting shed. Mark loves the idea of food going from our plate to compost to our veg patch and back to our plate. Plate to Plate Compost, simple. This episode is a complete version of what we discussed. This unmonetized bonus episode of Working Hours features unlicensed copyrighted material in the background. The unfortunate inclusion of copyrighted material in this unmonetized bonus episode of this podcast was unforeseen, is unintentional, and was purely incidental. For this reason, this unmonetized bonus episode is not published for commercial purposes. This unmonetized bonus episode has been published for information purposes only, as a recording that was undertaken for the Working Hours project. Right, let's do this unmonetized bonus episode of Working Hours with Mark Warner. So, you've mentioned it a few times, but we'll get into what is it that you're doing now?
So, I'm collecting and composting food waste from homes in Leeds and businesses in Leeds. And the reason why that started, again, serendipity, is as part of my job at Leeds Becker University, everyone was saying to me, why doesn't Leeds City Council compost food waste? Why don't they do curbside collection for food waste? They do everything else, why not this? So I asked them the question, and it was a very good answer, actually. So what they've done is they have built the incinerator up at Cross Green Industrial Estate, and the heat from that incinerator is then used for a district heating scheme. And one of the last things I did was I was helped the university plug in to the end of that district heating scheme. So it goes right the way from Cross Green all the way down through the city centre and then up to Leeds Beckett University, what we call the Portland building, which is opposite the Rose Bowl building.
Yeah.
So there's a big header that fits into that building, that boiler room there. And that's great because en route that provides the heating for an awful lot of social housing. So if you think about what happened with Ukraine and energy prices going through the roof, and everybody struggling, huge energy crisis, all of a sudden all these people in social housing are protected by that because they're getting the heat from the incinerator, which is burning the municipal waste of 1 million people within Leeds. So it's a very good scheme, but because of that, it didn't leave an awful lot for other waste segregation. And then also, of course, they did a trial in Rothwell, and the numbers just didn't stack up for them. And I think the numbers didn't stack up for them because the collections and the processing were both a cost to them.
Yeah.
But for me, the collection is an income.
Yeah.
And then the processing side of it is a cost, but then obviously it produces compost, which then gets sold, which is then another income. But actually, that income from compost sales is actually very small compared to the collections. The collection side of things is what brings in the main amount of money. So I thought, well, okay, the incinerator is great. It provides a district heating scheme, just like Finland and all these other Scandinavian countries. Although I don't think Finland's in Scandinavia technically, just in case anyone's red hot on their geography. Where was it going with it? So, yeah, I thought they had a good scheme. I thought it was a good answer, and I thought, well, the nutrients that are in food shouldn't literally go up in smoke.
Yeah.
The nutrients that are in food need to go back in the ground, and it needs to grow more food. So I thought, rather than be one of those people that points the finger at the council saying, why aren't you doing this? You should be doing this. I thought, sod it, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll see what happens. I did this, started 8 years ago, October 2016, and it's led to where I am now. I was able to take a leaving package at Leeds Beckett, which was fantastic. That's enabled me to now concentrate on Plate to Plate full time. And I've lost my train of thought with that, so we've got to two things there. Let's go back to, right, so rather than point the finger at Leeds City Council and say, why are you doing this? This is your problem, you should be dealing with this. I thought I would do it, see what happens. Started there in October 2016. Was doing that outside of work, so I was doing it evenings, before work, weekends. I was now able to take a package at Leeds Beckett, and I'm now doing it full time. So I'm all in now. I've taken the leap, and it's just kind of progressed really. It was so. Yeah, it started off really small. It started off with something I did free from my neighbours, then I realised I couldn't work for free, and then it just started growing from a domestic point of view, then the business customers started coming in, and the numbers have just been going in the right direction, awful lot of work, awful lot of sacrifices, but yeah, here I am with a business which I'm hopefully able to expand to be able to service the whole of Leeds. Now, how long that's going to take, I don't know, because that's quite a big jump from where I am now to where I need to be. But that's the plan, and hopefully, with the timing being right, 2025, the council have to offer curbside collection for food waste. That said, they had to do it in 2023 as well, and that never happened. And we also know that council budgets are massively restrained. A lot of councils are technically going bust, so Nottingham and places like that. So whether that's going to happen or not, we don't know. But it gives me something to aim for, a time frame to aim for, where hopefully I can build a facility and get the investment and the partners that I need in order to do that, to help the council do that, as well as the district heating scheme and the incinerator and all that sort of stuff. And then the reason why that's important is because 44% of the land in Leeds, I don't know if you know, is actually farmland. It's nearly 50% of the land in Leeds is farmland. And I've called it Plate to Plate because that's exactly what I want to happen. I want food waste to come off people's plate, get turned into compost, get used to grow more food, and then that food to end up back on the plate. So it's embracing that circular economy. And all of that has stemmed back to being a sustainability manager and people saying, why don't Leeds City Council do this? And then me saying, well, there's good reason they don't, but I'm going to give it a go and I'm going to see what happens. And it's panned out.
So,
before Greta Thunberg did that, by the way, stole my line. Yeah. If not me, then who? I said that way before she said it.
So, I mean, you've kind of told us some of the how you got into it. So let's talk about some of the how it works. So, finding a space to make your compost, getting into getting your inputs and getting your outputs. How did you go about that? Like, how much did you already have space and you were just like, right, let's make some initial compost, build up from there, look for new space to make more compost? Like, how did it come about?
Yeah, that was that was weird. Like all the good companies, Microsoft and did Apple and all that sort of stuff. I started in my garage, and I bought what they call a ride-and in-vessel composter. Stuck it in my garage, and at 11 o'clock at night, I mentioned I was collecting food from my neighbours. I was chopping up food with a spade in my wheelbarrow, mixing it with wood chip that I stored in a wheelie bin, and then I was putting it into this ride-and and composting it. And then I had a maturation box in one of my flower beds in the back garden, and then that was it. And I kind of thought, I'm not really going to manage the food waste of Leeds with this setup. So I was part of a community group called Feed Leeds, or I joined a community group called Feed Leeds, and I was talking to the guys who ran that. So there was a guy specifically called Tom Bliss, and he introduced me to West Leeds Activity Centre, because at the time they were looking for people to rent the land, the spare land that they've got. So they've got some what farmers would call marginal land that they weren't using, but they were hoping to make a bit of money from it. So I had a chat with them, and there was a little bit of woodland. They said, you can have this bit of woodland. There's a container there. We'll share that container. And 4 years ago, I moved there and haven't looked back since. So I've gone from managing, buckets of food waste from 10 households to 115, and now I've got 12 businesses on board, and I'm processing now. Last time I looked at the figures, 42 tonnes of food waste a year.
Wow.
So that's 42 tonnes of food waste, wood chip and coffee grounds. And that's just increasing all the time. And so I think this year I'll probably hit 55 tonnes of food waste this year. So it's quite an increase, and I do it in a really small amount of land. I'm able to do that in about 20 square metres, maybe a little bit more. So it's been very useful. But I've now outgrown that site, and I am actually looking for a new site. So if any of your listeners have anything that resembles a hay barn, a runway would be great, or any industrial site where which would be able to take HGVs and be able to put in a weighbridge and all that. So any of your listeners have anything like that which they think, maybe this would work, I'd love them to get in touch, and I'd love them to, please swap in contact details, introduce me via email or whatever, because I am on the lookout basically.
So with your volumes, like in terms of compost, that input going in, how much comes out? Does it rot down? Does it increase in size because you're adding these different elements? Like what do you end up with?
No, you would think 55 tonnes of food waste would equate to 55 tonnes of compost, but it doesn't. You've got to remember that 80 to 90% of all carbon-based life forms are water, including ourselves. So So actually you lose a hell of a lot. So you're lucky if you get a third of that weight, probably even less. But roughly those are the numbers. So yeah, you get about a third in terms of compost of what you get out. And then even that third, quite a lot of that's still wood chip because the food waste breaks down nice and quickly, releasing all the nutrients. But the wood chip takes a little bit longer to break down. So when you sieve it, out comes the wood chip, and then you've got even less compost. So composting really is a volume business. You need to be dealing with thousands of tons to be able to produce hundreds of tons worth of compost. So that's a bit annoying, but that's how it is. So you lose a lot of it to water and evaporation, which is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I expected of that there would be quite a big loss. In terms of then sales, do you have you got a deal with a retailer? Are you just selling it?
No,
bag by bag or?
Yeah, bag by bag basically. So
online largely or?
Yeah, more online. But the way that it's panned out, so part of the services for the domestic customers is they pay a monthly fee. So they pay £14 a month for a 10 litre bucket. Slightly more if they want bigger buckets, but we work it out. Every week I'll drop I'll pick up their full bucket and I give them a clean, sterilised, empty bucket. So they don't even have to wash it for £14 a month. Minimum wage is going to be £11.40 an hour, and I'm charging that monthly. So anyway. We swap that out, and then as part of the deal, on top of that, they get 2 free bags of compost. And so 115 customers getting 2 free bags of compost actually takes up most of the compost that I've got. And then the rest of it goes to Coastal Valley Farm, so they use it for their seeds, which they've got 2 really big polytunnels, which are mainly for tomatoes and plants like that. So Coastal Valley Farm, then there's Living Potential, which is up near towards Harrogate, Follyfoot. There's Sponge Tree, who have got some gardens in Yorkshire Waterside. And then there's Season Well, who are a community group who teach people how to grow and cook their own food. So the compost tends to go to those kind of organisations. Coastal Valley Farm is a community supported agriculture scheme, a CSA scheme. So it all goes there, and that's the way I'd like it to go. So have an online shop, but if you've been on the online shop, you'll see that it's always sold out. And the reason why it's always sold out is because these guys are emailing me going, "Oh, can I have 3 tons of your fine compost?" And I say, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So it all disappears pretty quickly, really.
So did it have a natural growth rate, or was it a calculation problem? Did you have to get to it, was it an equation where I need this much stuff, so I need to have this much input coming in to get this much output to break even / go into profit? And also there's the period of time of maturing your compost. You've got to plan in that time frame of how long does it make to make so many litres? How did you solve that?
I never thought about it. I just got on with it. Most people would kind of try to plan that sort of thing. I just cracked on. So what I did was I kept track of the numbers in terms of what are my costs, what's my income. And then I really focused more on the collections because that was more of a definitive number. If you have 100 people and you charge this amount of money, you'll end up with this amount of income. Well, does that cover my costs? No. So I need more customers. Then I did that. The compost, it started off as I wanted to make the money from the compost. But it's turned out that actually that's just an added value thing now, and actually I'm turning into more of a waste management company. And then the compost, any sales I make from that is just a bonus, really. Although, like I say, with the farms in Leeds, Coastal Valley Farm, and I've had conversations with Meanwood Urban Farm as well. And I'm hoping to sort out this March. The support in that is actually really important, and actually I would really like all of my compost to go to those schemes, if possible, because I like the circularity of it, and I like the fact that they are no use of chemicals whatsoever, that they're all about nutrient-dense food, and I think it's such a crucial issue at the moment in terms of our food, what's in our food, the links between pesticides and cancers, and
other chronic conditions.
Well, loads of chronic conditions. So the effect that has on your gut and all of your microbiome in your gut and how diverse that is. These chemicals
and how
kill
the
a lot of
effects
that off.
in your gut affect your brain and like increase anxiety and things like that.
All sorts of things. It has a massive impact on us, and we just don't realise it. It's a really, really important thing. And with the compost that I produce as well, there's no chemicals in there, so we don't use petrochemical-based fertilizers to guarantee how much phosphates in it or potassium. In compost you have a ratio of 2:2:2 or 2:5:10 or whatever it might be. We don't do that. It's a general purpose compost, and it is what it is. Because I don't want to use petrochemical-based fertilizers, because that is no good for all the microbes and organisms that live in our soil. Great for the plants and very available, very bioavailable to the plants, but not great for the organisms that look after the soil, which would then look after the plants naturally anyway.
Yeah, and which are what make the soil as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's no point having plants living in dead soil. You need to have plants living in living soil, because then they can, guess what? Look after themselves. It's almost like the planet's been around for 4 billion years and had 4 billion years of research and development, and has kind of cracked it. We come along, think we know better. We've been here for like 1 second.
Yeah, and the results are plain to see.
Yes, disastrous.
So I'm going to have a sip of coffee and then I'll go into the other questions.
Okay.
So we'll start off with COVID. So how did that affect things for you? So there's kind of two parts to this question. The first part is like going into lockdown, what was that like? Was it a huge increase in work? Did work fall off? Did it not change? And then coming out of lockdown, has there been anything that's changed for you work-wise? Has it made your work different now?
No, nothing changed. Absolutely nothing changed. But I will say, thank God I was doing this, because if I'd not been doing this, I wouldn't have been going out. So as a provider, a bin collection service is basically frontline
Key worker.
Yeah, exactly. So it was great. So I'd already gone part-time with Leeds Beckett before COVID kicked in. And I was already collecting on a Friday, and COVID came along and I was still collecting every Friday. So I was out and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. The roads were clear. I was doing my collections in record time. It was just amazing. In fact, when we started to come out of lockdown and the traffic started to I was really annoyed. So I was like,
where are these people? Where are they going?
Why are you still working from home? It's a great deal. Why wouldn't you do that? So it was great for me. It was great. And then also, we'll wait for the steam. So it was a great deal for me, because also when I was processing the food waste, I was at West Leeds, and I've already mentioned it's a little bit of woodland. So there I was, and I don't know if you remember, but that summer 2020 was red hot as well. So I was sitting in this woodland. I've got 3 huge cherry trees above where I process the food waste. And I was out in the sunshine, processing my food waste, just enjoying life basically. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And then coming out, of lockdown, coming out of lockdown was easier. Just there was no real change except for the bloody traffic, and that was it. And then I was able to expand. And also, I've got to say, so I mean, we're sat and Eat Your Greens now, and the hospitality industry, as we all know, took a massive hit, huge hit, and man, they worked hard to stay afloat. It was really difficult. I think I only lost one business customer as a result of it, and now they've come back out of it, and now they've re-employed me. So I lost them for a short period of time, but now I've got them back again. So yeah, because all of my business customers are all small restaurants, delis. You know, so Eat Your Greens here. We've got Slow Rise Bakery up in Horsforth. We've got Lidget Lane Larder. You know, so you would have thought that they would have all disappeared, but they didn't. Every single one of them managed to keep going, and every single one of them kept the service, and it was amazing, really, and it was a Herculean effort on their part, because it was man, it was tough. It was tough, and everybody was resorting to the same business model, which was right. Let's get food deliveries out, you know, and let's do this. And everyone was suddenly competing for that market as well. So it just went bonkers as far as they were concerned. But yeah, like I say, I only lost one. Actually, there was another customer who decided to stop trading. So yeah, I lost one permanently, and I lost one temporarily. But all the rest just kept going.
And are you continuing to grow? Did you grow through that time, and are you continuing to grow? Like, what's the growth rate like? Have you kind of expanded up to a size you need to be, and then you're kind of stable at the moment, and that's sort of growing at a normal rate, or is it going in spurts? Is it a general trend? What's the rate been like?
Yeah, the growth can be a bit up and down. So, you know, one year I might grow by 4%, and the next year I'll grow by 25%. So it's grown to a size now where I think over the next 12 months I'll be able to support myself financially, which is always beneficial. But like I said earlier on, I need to take a bigger step now. I need to go large now and really start looking at hundreds of thousands of tons, really, because there's not a lot of time to do this properly, and I'm 49 now, so I need to crack on. You know, this will be a grave dodger before we know it. You know, it's like so yeah. I've just got a few things I need to deal with within the next 5 months, and then after that, it's all out basically to try and get this new facility, to get something that the music's kind of good, but the other interruptions.
Well, we'll see back on the recording if it's all just music.
No voice whatsoever.
Well, at least people will know what we listened to while we chatted.
Well, this is it. So yeah, I need to, like I said, I've got 5 months where I've got to sort a few things out, and then I'm all in, and I need to get a facility where I'm dealing with hundreds of thousands of tons, and it's just a bit of a mission, really, just to get good quality, chemical-free compost out there to everybody, just to try and replenish our soils, because our soils are in a dire state. We're losing tens of thousands of acres of topsoil every year, and this is in a first world country. We're not talking like Ethiopia, where there's drought and famine and stuff. We're talking about first world country, which is known for farming and agriculture. So yeah, we need to sort this out, otherwise we're stuffed. Because without soil, there's no food. Without food, no humans.
Well, there's no society. Any society's 3 missed meals away from a revolution, isn't it? So.
That's it. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I want to talk bugs briefly.
Yeah. Okay.
So obviously, within the process of composting and carbon material rotting, bugs are an essential part of the process.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Are you pouring worms in, and then do they just get mashed up at the end, or what's your process for that though? Yeah,
no, I feel a bit bad about the worms. Yeah, I do feel bad about the worms, because what we do is, with the first 3 weeks, we compost in boxes. So that's to make sure we don't get a vermin problem, really. So rats, squirrels, mice, all that sort of stuff. So they're in these huge boxes made out of scaffolding boards with these big plastic lids on. They're raised from the ground, and every week we turn those. And by the end of 3 weeks, I mean, they're getting up to temperatures of 65, 75 degrees, so they're getting pretty hot. You know, I've thought about cooking stuff in them, but you know, maybe not. They'd have to be well wrapped up. So we turn those every week, and then by the end of the 3rd week, you've got a pretty raw compost, which then needs to kind of mature and break down. So that then goes into a windrow, which is on the floor and open to the elements. And then with it being on the floor, obviously all the worms come up into it, and there's just loads of worms. It's fantastic. Then we turn it again into another windrow, again more worms come into the process, and then we put it into a bay, which is covered, because it's still generating quite a lot of heat. And this is probably anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks from start to finish. And because it's getting so hot, the first windrow gets up to the highest recorded temperature is 81 degrees. So we're pretty close to you know, ignition basically, it's going up in flames. But even when it gets into the bay, it can be 50 degrees. You know, and every time during summer it dries out, so we add water to it. And every time we add water to it, it's like an inferno again, you know. And then when it gets into the bay, we sieve it, and that's where the worms kind of get it really, and that's not that great. So this year we're experimenting with a new process where we've taken stuff from the bay and we've created another big pile, and we did this in back end of October, and we've just left it. We've said, right, when it comes to March, we're just going to bag that up and we're just going to see what happens. We'll start that in September. In October, a customer of mine wanted some compost, and that was the only compost we had, and it had been maturing for a month there. So bearing in mind, it's already been 2 to 3 months, plus another month there. So we said, look, we've got this stuff that we're experimenting with, we're trialing with it a little bit, do you want to try it? They said, yeah, no problem. And I know there's a lot of variables to this, but October was really, really warm. And we put this compost down on their garden in October, and within 5 days things had started to bud again, flowers had started to bud again, and like I said, there's a lot of variables, but the main difference is they put this compost on there, didn't dig it in, watered it in, and all of this was a noticeable change. So much so that they told me, and I went back down and I took pictures of it and things like that. And I've done nothing to this compost. I have not sieved it. All it's done is sit there and basically broken down. So I'm thinking this is probably the way to go. If I don't have to sieve it, there's no electrical use, there's no carbon emissions from the electricity for that. It's a very natural process. I don't have to kill all the worms that are in there, because you know the sieve destroys worms. It also destroys any fungal build-up in there as well. So you really want fungus in your compost, because the fungus is what breaks down, particularly wood chip. It feeds off the lignin in wood chip. Lignin is the bit in wood that makes, it's the woody bit in wood basically. So it feeds off all that, then you know the bacteria then feeds off.
Which fixes carbon into the soil, I'm guessing.
Well, no,
because you're using the wood
for
right?
No. So this is a misnomer. The process of composting does not absorb compost. It releases compost. The process of The process of composting does not absorb carbon. It releases carbon, because what you're doing is you're breaking down carbon-based life forms, and that breakdown process releases carbon. So if you look at the Environment Agency carbon conversion factors, they release them every July. The process of composting has, I think it's about, I can't remember what the conversion factor is, but basically if you compost a ton of food waste, it will release about 8 kilograms of carbon, which is not a lot. You know, and that's total carbon equivalent. So that's taking all of the greenhouse gases, including methane, and turning it into a carbon figure. So that's 8 kilograms total carbon equivalent for 1 ton of municipal food waste, roughly-ish.
Yeah.
It changes as their data improves. Compare that to burning gas, which equates to something like 2,000 kilograms, 2 tons, for a ton of gas, which is amazing because it's a ton of gas. How can it produce that much things? Well, you're burning,
carbon.
gas. You're burning, methane as well, and things like that, which has a higher carbon conversion factor. So therefore, it results in more carbon. So hence the science coming back in. So where carbon gets sequestered is when so you add compost to the soil. That then adds nutrients to the soil. You've then got the fungus and the particularly mycorrhizal fungus in the soil, which then makes the macronutrients even more available to plants by attaching itself to the plant root. That then increases the growth of the plant, which then increases the growth of the root system, and that's what sequesters carbon. So what happens is most of the carbon stored by a plant, for example, is in the root. So really, you shouldn't really be pulling the plants up. You should be chopping them off and leaving the roots in the soil, because that's where all the carbon is stored. And then carbon gets stored in the soils because all of the biological process and the biochemical processes are happening in the soil, and the carbon that is generated from that doesn't escape, it stays in the soil. Obviously some does escape, but most of it stays in the soil, and that's why it soil sequests carbon. And there was a study done with wild boars as to how much carbon is released as a result of wild boars just turning up soil. And that's because they are basically releasing the carbon by hunting for truffles and worms and all sorts of other stuff that they eat as well. So, but the process of composting itself releases carbon. It's a misnomer that it absorbs it. It doesn't.
Cool. I'm going to go on to the next question. I'm going to do Brexit first because I don't think this will have been a major effect for you, but we might have. But yeah, since we have Brexited, have you noticed any change in your work at all?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I'm not a fan. We should have stayed in the European Union. So on a day-to-day basis, the answer is no. I collect from homes and businesses, I process here and I sell here. I have nothing to do with trade in Europe. But what I need as a small business is I need the science. So I need people to analyse my compost. I need to know how good it is. If I want to produce a new product for the biorenewable sector or the agricultural sector, so say I had some leachate from the compost tested and analysed to see whether I could sell it as a liquid-based fertiliser. And that was all that science, all of the research into that, all of the reports that were written was funded by the European Development Fund, and that's now gone.
Yeah.
And now the focus on UK government funding doesn't seem to be in that line. I kind of fall
not a big fan of science, are they?
No.
Or anything really, other than banking and oil.
Or IT. And that's the thing. If you are a heavy industry, they're not that interested. And also, I applied for some funding to use the heat generated from the compost to then develop a system that would then take some of that heat and put it into a polytunnel to extend the growing season. So I don't know if you know, but a lot of tomatoes which are grown in polytunnels, they use the heat that's recovered from combined heat and power. So all of the heat from there is pumped into the polytunnels and then grow tomatoes. But you need natural gas in order to do that. So you're using a fossil-based fuel, you're burning that, you're producing carbon to then grow more tomatoes. Compost the heat is generated through a natural biological process, the breakdown of nutrients, particularly nitrogen, through bacteria and fungus. No fossil fuels involved in there. You take the fuel from that, you pump that into a polytunnel, and you get the same effect. You can grow tomatoes or peppers or whatever it might be, courgette, for a longer period of time. You can start earlier and can finish later. That's got to be a good thing. The bid was accepted. Everyone said, this is great, we should be doing this. But the partner I chose, which happened to be Kirkstone Valley Farm, was set up, as I've already said, as a community-supported agriculture. And it's set up on a mutual basis. So it is actually a mutual, and the accounts are done on that basis. We didn't qualify, even though the bid had been accepted, we didn't qualify because we had to be a business. As defined by government. So this innovation could have been applied to absolutely anybody in the growing sector. It could have been applied to a farm that runs as a business, as per government's definition of a farming business. It could have been run for cooperatives, it could have been done for mutuals. Everyone could have benefited from this, but because it wasn't a business in the true sense of the word, or a limited company or whatever it might be, we were then withdrawn from the process. So that's bananas. Why would you discriminate against an organisation because they have a different financial setup? And let's face it, that financial setup is just a spreadsheet at the end of the day. It's nothing more than that. And we just account for things slightly differently. So I think they're a bit narrow-minded in that respect. And I think composting is deemed as an industrial process. So there's not a lot of funding to set that type of business up. But if I was an IT business, or say for example I was a business that used laser cutting to build sheds, then they would be interested in me, because a laser cutter would cost £10,000, but that laser cutter might generate 3 employees. And so therefore that £10,000 investment is a really, really good investment, because it results in more employees. That's fine, but because heavy industry, you're looking at £200,000 for a JCB digger that you're going to need to move food waste around to compost it. Well, £200,000 investment isn't going to result in 3 jobs. It's going to result in 1 job, the driver's job. That's not a good investment in their eyes, despite the fact you need to deal with food waste, and you need to be feeding the soil, and you need to be supporting the farmers, and you need to be growing nutrient-dense food. That's really, really short-sighted, in my view. Maybe I'm being biased here.
I think there's something in that, in terms of, this whole thing of us being too detached from our food and not really knowing where it comes from and so on. I think there's a level of that with just materials. Like, there's so much of a focus in modern discourse business-wise, and I think you saw this in lockdown as well to a degree, of they don't know where the stuff comes from. It's just everything's just assembled and produced. It doesn't, things are magically there, they don't have to form over millions of years. They don't have to be shipped, they're just brought together and put together, and then you have a thing that you sell. And in lockdown, if you remember, they were sort of initially everybody stay at home. Oh, hang on, not everybody. These people don't stay at home because we need some things to work. Oh, and also these people, you don't stay at home. Oh, and you as well. So there was this, it changed a lot, didn't it, in the first few days?
Do you know, it was really interesting. So it highlighted to me how lots of people are standing on the shoulders of giants. But those giants are your bin men, it's your nurses, it's all the people that do the jobs.
Make society function.
Correct, correct. Now, if the bin guys go on strike, you know about it, and that's a major problem. But we don't value them as much as we do, say, maybe a surgeon or a lawyer or an accountant or someone like that.
They're healthcare providers. This is the thing, and this is another thing coming out of lockdown, of customer service staff also healthcare like workers, they're psychiatric workers, they're security workers, like they're the ones that will ring the police, that are seeing stuff, that have things happening that people come into to ask for directions and so on. And again, like you say, these are low paid workers, thought of as low skilled, but you need to have all of these people skills to do it successfully and well. And again, like low paid, and they make things function.
What lockdown highlighted was that basically a third of our population is one pay packet away from being homeless, and that's outrageous. How and even coming out of lockdown, and even where we are now, how can you have a midwife who's maybe a single parent, kids, earning what is thought to be a reasonable wage, who then has to rely on food banks to feed a family? That's not a first world country, and this isn't a cost of living crisis. This is a wages crisis. This is us not keeping track of who's important in this society and who helps to keep the society running, and we don't value that. And it's outrageous, and I think lockdown really highlighted that as to how much of our population is genuinely on the brink, maybe not defined as poor, but very much on the brink of being poor, and then the wages crisis as well has just been another thing, we really undervalue it. Whereas I mentioned Finland earlier on, they pay a lot more tax, but they pay their key workers, if you like, a lot more. So, yes, a surgeon in Finland will be paid more than the binman in Finland, but the gap isn't ginormous. I don't know what the actual wages are, but to give you an idea of scale, you're probably talking about £45,000 a year for a binman, and you're talking about £75,000 for a surgeon. There's not much of a gap between them. Whereas here, a binman might be on, say, £25,000 a year, maybe, right? When a surgeon is going to be on 120k. That's a big gap between the two, and we don't value that. And the gap, which everybody knows, the gap is just getting bigger and bigger. And all the government wants to happen is they want businesses to pay for that. So their get out of jail free card was, well, in April we're just going to bump up minimum wage, and that's going to go to £11.40 an hour. Well, that's fine if you're a big business. Well, it's not fine. Your biggest bill in any business is your people bill. But what that will do is that will drive investment in machines and technology, and that will drive a focus on reducing the number of people in that business. You mentioned AI earlier on. Even bricklayers aren't safe from AI. There's machines now that are laying thousands of bricks a day. And that kind of thing is just going to drive businesses towards that kind of thinking. Whereas a small business like myself, that's a huge increase for me. I'm able to swallow that cost, but there are lots of small businesses who can't swallow that cost, and that wage bill is basically going to it's either going to result in redundancies, and then that person is no better off, who works for that business, because now they're unemployed. They probably would have quite liked to have stayed at £10.85 or whatever they were getting. Or that business is going to go bust, and then that's no good for the economy, because now all of a sudden all these small to medium enterprises, which is an awful big proportion of the UK economy, are just going to go under. So stop going for the easy fixes and getting everybody else to fix your problem, Richie. Sort the economy out. And stop doing stupid cheap tricks like tartar. Which is under the, you're blaming Tata Steel losing 2,800 jobs on climate change because they're going to have a less carbon intensive process. They're going to use arc welding instead of manufacturing steel. Stop blaming it on climate change, because it's got nothing to do with that.
Especially where you're flying everywhere.
Well, where is he flying to, mainly? He's flying to India. Where is the steel for the UK going to come from? Guess what? It's coming from India. Chief executive of Tata Steel, He's Indian, right? Right. Stop messing around. Be honest and open and transparent. If that's your plan, that's your plan. But don't blame it on a better climate, a less carbon intense process, and then that's the reason for losing jobs. It's not. You've decided to close that down because you want to buy steel from Asia, right? It probably makes perfect sense, but be honest about it, you know. And then the study of that is those 2,800 people, the knock-on effects on that economy is 10 to 15,000 people will lose their jobs because there won't be as much coming into the local economy, so the pubs, the restaurants, the shops, they're all going to close down as well. Stop doing that shit. Fix the economy, right? And stop getting people, small to medium enterprises or businesses, to bail you out by simply putting up the cost of living, not the cost of living, by simply putting up the minimum wage. It's not going to work. Sort out the economy, do your job. You know.
So we'll do social media first. So what I want to look at here is how much time you have to spend on social media and whether you think that investment of time is worth it for you. Do you get what you want out of social media, or do you not really bother with it much, or like what's your experience with it? Do you feel good with it?
Social media is a full-time job. It is definitely a full-time job, and I don't have the time to do it. There is a value to social media, and what I do is I just post me. So it's not. So there are different types of social media. There's very slick marketing. You know, you look at Disney's, Paramount. You know, you look at those kind of guys, very slick. And then there's community-based marketing, which is about highlighting CSA schemes, for example, community supported agriculture, or a community composting scheme, or you know, there's the local Facebook marketplace and all that sort of stuff. You know, there's that type of thing. And then there are small businesses who do it very well. So Charles Dowding, for example, the No Dig Gardener, his social media is really good, but it's educational as well. So what he's saying is he's saying, here's my latest book, but what he's also saying is, right now you need to be planting this, and this, and you know, in March you need to be doing this. So he's providing information, and he's not just selling his service and selling himself. There's also an educational bit to it as well. So where I'm at the moment is I'm kind of like in between the community and the educational side of things. So I'm saying, here I am, this is what I'm doing. I'm not very slick, my pictures aren't that great.
Do you do like reels and videos of like the process and like how the tubs are doing and things?
Yeah.
Because I think they'd be pretty popular, are they?
I take videos of, you know, things steaming away. And then, you know, all that, and then I'll take some videos about the worms, and then I'll say, right, you know, these are really important because, you know, what they're doing is they're eating everything, and what comes out the other end of a worm, strangely, is more nutritious than what went in the front end of the worm. That's magic. That no one really quite knows how that happens. So I'm trying to do that, but the thing is, it's really, really time intensive, and to do it well, you've got to invest a load of time. And I just simply, as a small business, do not have the time to do that. I think it can be effective, but it's not one of these. Everyone seems to think, oh, if I go on social media, you know, like TikTok, and I'm going to do all these things, I'm going to be an overnight sensation. It's going to go viral. The evidence says that to get any kind of presence whatsoever is going to take a minimum of 2 years. Now, there's always that exception to that rule. There's always someone who blows up overnight, and it does happen. But it's like being a professional footballer. 1% of the people who go into football end up becoming professional footballers. Social media is like that. You know, most people will not blow up overnight, will not go viral. It will take years and years to build up a fan base and you know, and get somewhere with it. So I'm trying to just be there for information, but I have noticed that even by doing it in a very, very basic, rough, crude format, that it has affected the business, because this year I haven't done a lot of it, and this year I haven't been getting many
Like
people
new-
coming
yeah.
in, and inquiries and things.
Yeah.
And it does seem to be strange that I've ramped down on social media, and then that's come down as well. Whereas previously I was getting 2, 3, 4
Yeah.
inquiries a month, and it would be quite steady, and it would,
Yeah.
particularly on the domestic side of things, it would grow quite nicely. But that hasn't happened. So I think there is a link there.
Yeah.
You do need to have a presence on social media. You do
Yeah.
need to be posting probably at least about once a week or something like
Yeah.
that. And it doesn't matter how crude it is. And I think there's a certain...
So long as there's something there, yeah.
Correct. And what you're looking for is you're looking for people to share it. So that's where the education side of things come in. If you are giving people information, you're telling people what they want to know, they'll share it, and that's really what you want, because that will then increase your SOE, where you're going to come up in searches and things like that. So, yeah. I'd like to do more work on it. I'd like it to be a lot slicker. I want to do a YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel, actually. I have a YouTube channel. I have a whopping 26 followers. But one of my videos was actually on the leachate study I had done through this European funding that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And that has had over 300 views.
Yeah.
And that's because it's highly informative. And one of my most
And
favourite...
specialist.
Yeah,
Yep.
correct. Well, there's a lot on YouTube where people will say, oh, if you do this and you pour water through your compost, what comes out the bottom will be great you'll be highly nutritious and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And you've gone, is it?
Correct, correct. I have. I've questioned that, and I've used European funding to find out whether that is actually useful or not. And my favourite comment on that one particular video, which is about the leachate that comes out of the rhydans, is someone said, thank you so much. This has been incredibly useful on my green waste management course. It's been really helpful. Thank you. And I was like, yes, that is what it's all about.
I think so. I had a discussion recently with someone who's another environmental, like they study an environmental degree, that they ended up working in that area. And huge process of learning lots of different things, also learning how to push things through within an organisation of like, we want this, but you can't have that, and you can't have that. Oh, maybe you can have this and you can have that. Where am I going with this? So it's around, I guess, expertise in the science and so on. Do you think, I think that's an area of growth, because people are doing these environmental degrees now, but they don't have the years of working experience. Okay, you haven't always had that working experience necessarily, getting your hands as dirty as you are now, for example.
Yeah.
But you do have that years of working within organisations. Like, you will have, I guess, experiences of learning, like, getting wins from low-hanging fruit and things like that, and then planning bigger things. I think there's a lot of experiential knowledge in what you've done. Do you?
Working for large organisations has been very useful. Learned a lot of skills, particularly around the management side of things, and that was great. I should have got out years ago, because you're never going to achieve what you want to achieve if you work for someone else. You've got to work for yourself in order for that to happen. And yes, I had some wins. We connected to the district heating network. We got solar photovoltaic arrays up there. We got ISO 14001. We did all these things. It was brilliant, but it took like 21 years to do it. It was and I had wins along the way, but they were really small wins. And as you've already alluded to, I wasn't getting my hands. I couldn't feel and touch it and smell it.
It's all conceptual, abstract papers.
Yeah,
I suppose there's the occasional thing where it's like, oh, look, we have actually got solar panels. Or we've put this in, or we've changed the boiler. But generally, you don't really see the effect of your work.
Yeah, you're looking at a spreadsheet most of the time, and you're going, oh, that number's gone down.
Yeah.
Oh, great. What do we do? We'll break open the champagne. That was very, very frustrating for me, really frustrating, which is now I am controlling the whole process, and I know what needs to be done. The money meant I had to buy a diesel van, but I want an electric van, and I want an electric mini digger, and I know the things that need to be done to do that, but I also know the pros and cons of diesel versus electric, and I understand the argument on both sides of it. It's not quite as good as you think. terms of EVs. But I know all this knowledge, and I've been able to absorb myself in that. So it has helped me, but I should have done it when I was 30. I should have. I had enough knowledge and experience after 10 years of working in industry to do that myself. The problem, I think, was I didn't know what I wanted to do. That question didn't come up. Why don't the council do this? Which then made me think, do you know what? I'll do it instead. I didn't see that niche. So maybe there's a bit of that as well. Maybe it takes a bit of time for you to actually know what it is you actually want to do.
I would agree with that. And there's a lot of, I've always sort of thought of various businesses or ideas or things, but it's always been it's finding something that you care enough about to actually go, yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And that's the hard bit, isn't it? And I think for a lot of people, I think that's the thing. There's a lot of people out there who's like, I want to work for myself, I want to have my own business. What the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
And, and the other thing as well is people don't generally research when they're going into stuff. They're kind of like, we do this kind of cursory research of there's people make money having hospitality things. I'll have a cafe. How hard can that be? People do it.
Yeah, really
loads
hard.
of them. Yeah.
And then a pandemic comes on and it's really fucking hard.
But then, I don't know. I think teaching sort of GCSE kids and stuff research, teaching research earlier, how to find things out.
Oh my God. Right. So yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I've got 5 months to get stuff over and done with. That is actually get my eldest son through his GCSEs, and we've actually pulled him out of school, and we're home teaching him for this next 5 months. Lots of different reasons, and actually that is probably the biggest benefit he's going to get from this experience is actually having the discipline, and because he's now in a situation that you're not normally in until you're in university, which is where all of a sudden you're in a house by yourself. Well, he's not by himself, obviously we're there, but you go to university, you're in a house by yourself or with all these other kids, and you've suddenly got to have the discipline to turn up to your own lectures, follow that timetable, to then do your own research, do your own homework. He's now doing that at GCSE level, and that's probably one of the biggest benefits he's going to get from this experience is, I'm saying to him, use the internet. If you don't know the answer to that question, well, go and find it. You've got the biggest library in the world sat on your desk.
And learn how to use it, start learning what sort of sources you can trust and those kind of things, yeah. Well, go to the source of if someone says there's this fact here, find the paper, go to the source.
Yeah. And we've had this conversation because there was a situation where, in African and Jamaican literature, there's a character called Anisi, and he's the trickster, right? And I listened to one of our lecturers actually talk about this character, and I said, this is amazing. And I did some research into it. It was the first Spider-Man. He was always portrayed as a spider.
Spider God, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I said to Jake, look at this, research this, totally off the curriculum. Nothing to do with Macbeth or Christmas Carol or anything like that, totally off the curriculum. And then I said, tell me what you find out about it. And I came back a couple of hours later, and it produced no work. And so I was well, where's the output on this? What's happened here? So, well, I ended up reading this 40-page document on it, and I found out, the one thing I found out about it is that actually Dobby from Harry Potter is a trickster. I was like, that'll do me, that's great, fantastic. You went down a rabbit hole, and you read a 40-page document, you found out something that, it sparked you, that your imagination, you remembered it, and you've researched it, and that's what happens with research. Your research takes hours and hours and hours, you distill it into a short bit of information, and then you produce 1,000 words or something. You know what I mean? So that's how it works. So I'm fine with that. That's great. Keep doing more of that, because you're right in what you're saying. That's the important thing. You need to learn what is credible, what's not credible. You need to learn how to do it quicker. You need to learn the different sources of information and how to go around and do it. It's not just about gaming. That's great. There's loads else. There's a lot more you can do with all this, and people generally, what I'm finding is the education system is very much like a driving test. So a driving instructor is not teaching you really how to drive. What they're teaching you to do is how to pass the test.
Yeah.
And you only learn how to drive when you're in the car by yourself for that
After
first
you
time.
pass the test.
Yeah, heading towards the motorway thinking, oh my God, we didn't do this.
Unless you paid extra after.
Yeah, correct, exactly. But generally, most people don't pay extra, right? They just head towards that slip road and hope for the
But
best.
you've got the piece of paper now, haven't you? So
Correct, and that's what like doing your GCSEs is like. You know, you pass your GCSEs, and then suddenly you're heading towards that motorway, thinking, what the am I going to do now? You know, am I going to do A levels? Am I going to go out? So,
and there's no preparation for it either, is there? Because it's like you go from like being told essentially what to read, what to look at, what to think about, what like the areas that you're covering, and like you say, that to a degree they're training you for tests and exams and stuff, into a situation where they're like, here's a huge list of books to read. You can read them. You don't have to. You probably should. It'll help. But we won't ask you about it.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're like, what?
And then, by the way, produce a 20,000 word dissertation on
and
it,
pick one of these questions. Maybe even pick your own question eventually. Like.
Yeah. Suddenly you're in free flow.
You're like, what?
Freestyle.
I haven't been trained to think for myself.
This is it. It's totally different. And, you know, degree is not as hard as A levels. I believe A levels are going to be the hardest qualifications you ever do. What's difficult about degree is exactly what you've just said there. It's like suddenly it's free flow, it's free form education. And I've got to do all this myself. We're not taught how to do that. We're not taught. And the other thing is, we don't, as human beings, we don't make decisions based on facts and information. We make our decisions on emotion. Yeah, exactly. But you did say earlier on that most people, don't really think about or the business case. And you were asking as well. Did you do the calculation? And I said no. I just got on with it.
I did.
And did it. No. And I think sometimes if you did the calculation, you wouldn't do it. And if you want to run your own business, there's got to be a certain amount of that.
Yeah.
But I think the key thing here is that business has got to have a purpose for you.
Yeah.
And that purpose has got to be quite compelling. And if you don't have that purpose or sense of purpose,
you've no reason to keep going through the hard times. Other than, I guess, you've invested in it. And
you're probably just all about the money.
Yeah.
But is the money going to give you the satisfaction that you want, or are you just going to feel like you're a bit of a slave to the money?
Yeah.
Because it's easy. If you want to earn money, we know what go into IT, become a lawyer. we know what to do to make money. But lots of people feel trapped by the money, and if we're all motivated by money, we'd all be rich. But we're not. We're motivated by the freedom that money provides. We're motivated by the fact that if we want to go on 5 skiing trips a year, we can do that. And that's what we're really motivated by, the freedom of it. But if you have a purpose, you're prepared to sacrifice those things, and you're prepared to say, well, actually, no, I'm doing something which is a bit bigger than me. And something that is going to benefit a community, or it's going to benefit the environment, or it's going to benefit people's kids, or you're doing it for something bigger than that. And I think what you need to do though is you do need to be aware of things like sunk cost error. So maybe you put in 10 grand into a business and it's not quite working. The natural thought is to say, well, I've sunk 10 grand into that business. I need to keep going because I've spent 10 grand. So I need to spend another 10 grand. That's sunk cost error. If it's not working, stop.
Yeah.
Accept you've lost 10 grand. Don't go and lose another 10 grand.
Yeah, you're not Jeff Bezos.
No, correct. And he can only do that because it's not his money.
Yeah.
So stop. Just stop. Don't do sunk cost error. So you have to be quite realistic with yourself. But I think, for me personally, jumping in to something and just going for it, and then looking at the numbers as you're doing it, and then making those adjustments and those tweaks to make those numbers stack up and go in the right direction. That's the key.
I mean, you didn't have any big capital costs to start up anyway, did you? You're starting in your garage and you're building up.
It was reasonable. I mean, that ride end was £3,500, and that came out of the kids' savings fund. So we were kind of.
So did you have to buy a van as well, or did you
for
collections?
No. This is the other thing I was going to say as well. So a lot of people, when they go into business, they go, right, I want to get the car.
Yeah.
I want to get the office. I want to get, this. I want to get that.
Yeah.
Don't
make money first. Get that later.
Yeah. Use what you've got.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had a Volvo XC70, which I've still got it actually. So that's an estate car, big car. Bought it because I was a scout leader at the time, and I needed to get patrol tents in the back, and I killed the Alfa Romeo that I had. It was absolutely destroyed it with patrol tents. Went over speed bumps, and the suspension just fell to bits.
Yeah.
So got something a bit bigger, but that was great for collections. So I was going around collecting buckets of food waste using my Volvo.
Yeah, there's a lot of space in there.
Using my garage, using my garden, using my kids' savings. But yeah, no, I didn't do any of those things until I was generating an income. Then I went to West Leeds and then paid the rent on that, and then built it up so that I could then buy a van. And I'm quite proud of the fact that I haven't had to go to a bank. And I haven't been, there's not someone at the end of the month going, make this payment or we take your house, sort of thing, and I'm really proud of that. I'm really pleased with that. I think to do what I want to do now, which is go big and have a big site that deals with hundreds of thousands of tons of food waste, I'm probably going to have to change my attitude a bit on that, and maybe get a loan and get investors in and things. But up till now, no, I'm really pleased. I've generated my own money and made my own money, and been quite frugal with what I've got. And I think that's what. Yeah, I think sometimes that's where people go wrong. When you get a loan and you get the car and the office and all that sort of stuff, it's nice to start with, but then it's just a millstone around your neck after that.
Well, that's it. When they do the forecasting and stuff, and it's like, for me, I mean, like, obviously people with experience of doing that, they have a better sense of what they're looking for and how to do it. But it's like, they would say stuff like, just put numbers in there, and it's like, but what numbers and how big? Do you know what I mean with that? Like, how are you trying to project how much you'd be earning each month potentially? It's like, I don't even know if anyone will buy any of this. How am I supposed to guess that?
Well, that was the thing. I mean, you don't know what numbers you're looking at when you first start, because you think you do, and you can have a.
Well, you make them up, don't you? You guess, and then it goes to market and we test it.
Yeah, but then 12 months later, you know what the numbers are.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then you need to stop doing what you're doing, because you should be looking at the numbers all the time.
You're gonna have a tax bill soon, so
that's right, exactly.
Chase up your receipts.
And you should be, you should be recording. You should be recording everything you spend, everything you make, and you should be doing it when you do it, not at the end of the year. Because guess what? You're not going to remember.
You won't remember any of it.
So it's interesting. But as human, like I was saying before, we tend to make decisions based on emotion, and we need to stop doing that. That's where AI is better than us. AI, on the whole, I think, makes decisions based on hard data, and says,
It also has a weird tendency to be a bit needy and a bit lion.
Well,
occasionally.
Well, let's face it, Chat GPT.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a bullshitter, isn't it? Really.
Total blag artist.
Yeah.
I can write that for you.
Yeah. This is it.
All of these are genuine sources. I don't make any of these up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So if you know what you're talking about, you can spot it quite easily. It's ridiculous. No, it's fraught with danger, obviously. But yeah, we need to look at the facts and the figures, and particularly with going back to your friend who studied in an environmental degree, is now going into big business and things like that. Trying to think of an example. The classic example is climate change.
Well, that was going to be the next question anyway, so we'll start on this, but then...
All the scientists who have looked at the cold, hard data, they've all agreed climate's changing, and it's due to anthropogenic, man-made, human-made problems, oil, the economy, etc. And we're very good at saying, yeah, well, not my problem. I'll be dead by the time it happens. Well, actually, why
No,
not?
you'll be dead because it's happened.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Every civilization has come to an end, right? The Romans came to an end, the Greeks came to an end, the Egyptians came to an end, the Easter Islanders came to an end, the Aztecs came to an end, who apparently were ginormous, far bigger than we ever first thought. Someone had to be around at the end. Why not us at the end of this civilization? And that's really what we're talking about here. We're not talking about saving the planet. The planet will look after itself. We're talking about saving this civilization. So we need to start making the right decisions, and we need to start making sure that we don't base decisions on emotions, which is like, yeah, but I really want those 5 skiing holidays. Have one and enjoy it. Maybe go for 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks. There's some compromise here.
Did you say you're going to be driving someone else?
And we don't do that. And those research skills that you're talking about, most people don't have it. Most people won't look at the numbers. Most people won't do the calculation. Most people won't look at the risk associated to it. We have a very funny perception of risk. So a friend of mine's a pilot for British Airways, and he was talking to me about my fear of flying. I'm not a fan of flying. And he said, well, actually, we all know it's the safest way to travel. Statistically.
It's not that safe when it falls out of the sky.
Oh, when it falls out of the sky, it's certain death. I don't care how many life jackets are under your seat, you're going to die.
But again, with the testing for that, like they have to do something like it can only fail like 1 in a million times, or even higher. Like the margin of error for it is so high, like across.
Just wait for that to finish.
Who ordered the smoothie?
Yeah. For fuck's sake. Trying to do an interview over here. Whilst that's going on, shall we get another coffee? Do you want another?
I'm all right for coffee. I've out coffeed, but I'm okay with water for now. But go for it, yeah.
So a friend of mine, pilot for British Airways, talking to me about my fear of flying, and he said the way that we look at risk is bizarre. It's really, really bizarre. So when 9/11 happened, everyone became a lot more reluctant to fly.
Yeah.
But he said, actually,
we're scared of it after it's happened to us.
Yeah. Well, there is that, or after an event has happened. But he said, this is ridiculous because less people died on the plane than died in the building. Actually, when you look at it from a statistic point of view, standing in a really tall building is more dangerous than going on a plane. We have a very strange way of looking at risk and assessing risk. And I was like, actually, that is very true, actually, because 3,000 people died in those 2 buildings, as opposed to, I think it was like just under 300. So, from a risk point of view, it's more dangerous to stand in a tall building. You're quite right.
Yeah, it's like the stranger danger stuff. It's like, we know that most people are at risk from people they already know, not from strangers, but the profile is always strangers, And it's the same with, like, there's a thing in, if you ever read Freakonomics, there was a thing in there where, like, I know loads of it's been debunked and stuff, but there was a thing in there talking about how many toddlers die in the US where they have pools, like loads of it, but most of the news with toddlers and stuff is like toddlers with guns, which is tiny compared to this actual thing that's a risk. But that's the one that gets the headlines and the news and so on, because it's more spectacular and
it's heartstrings and emotions.
But it's like online, how outrage fuels so much of online engagement. Of like, go for the shock, get people emotional, get them to act on.
But then they live in fear. And and over something that
we're
is very
reinforcing our own
happen.
bad behaviour.
Yes, that's right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Really, so there was I was saying about, I just sparked a thought there, quite a lot of thoughts. Yeah, so going back to information and making decisions based on the right information, there's a website called Gapminder, and that was started by a Swedish statistician. Unfortunately, he's died, but his son is now taking it over, and the website is dedicated to all of that, which is we think certain things are true, but actually they're not. So one of the questions, for example, in 1958, 30-something% of the world's population lived in poverty. What do you think that number is now? And it will say 9%, 36%, 50%. I can't remember the exact question. And again, it's just to give you an idea of what it is. And everyone goes, oh, well, if it was 30% in 1958, it's got to be higher, right? It's gone up. So I'm going to go 36 or I'm going to go 50%. It's wrong. It's 9%. So actually, poverty globally has decreased. And it's really important to know that, because if you think everybody's getting poorer, then you, particularly if you're in government or some kind of position to influence this, then you're going to make the wrong decisions. You're going to make them based on the wrong assumptions. But what it also says is, it says, oh, you got this wrong, just like 99% of the other people have answered this question. You know, and I know it's 99%, I know that figure because I got it wrong. And I was like, oh, well, that's nearly 100% of us got it wrong, so I feel okay about that. You know? It's really, really insightful. So I'd recommend Gapminder just to reorientate yourself and get a sense of what is actually happening around here, you know. And people, it's not intuitive for people. People don't really want to do that, but it's so important, and it's something I'm trying to tell my son. You need to know. You need to know. And going back to your point about sensationalizing things, one of the questions is about world population. So we're nearly at 8 billion people in the world population. And it's one of the questions is which map represents the distribution of those 8 billion. So it has like a figure that represents a billion, and it's got 2 billion in North America, 2 billion in there, and then it's got like 4 billion scattered around everywhere else, right? And actually, America has less than 1 billion population.
I mean, if you think of the Anglosphere, there's less than 1 billion people there. Like, you know, you add up Australia, Canada, America, Britain, New Zealand, Ireland, still not 1 billion people. There's 1 billion in India now. There's more than 1 billion in China.
In Asia, that's 5 billion of the population.
Yeah, it's where everyone lives.
So they said, well, why is this important? Well, they said, you probably think America is a bigger population than it actually is because of the news, but it's not true. And they're like positioning themselves as a world economy. So, but actually, the facts is Asia's the economy. That's the big economy because there's 5 billion people there. That's where all the shoes are being made. That's where all the
exchange is happening.
Yeah, and that's why Richie has gone to India. You know? And that's why I said it's probably a reasonable move. Just be a bit more open about it, a bit more honest. So it's important. It's important that we understand the context and we understand the data, and that we make the right decisions based on the data, not on what we think is correct.
I'll wait for this to finish. Right.
We've got the steamer and we've got the smoothie.
We got everything.
Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. Maybe we should have gone to the library.
I mean, I was up for trying it, and like I did want to find other places in town to record. I did one. So you can hire rooms at Virgin Money on Briggate.
All right, can you?
Like for free. You have to book them sort of online. Yeah. But I couldn't find the staff, couldn't get in a room, so I was just sort of sat upstairs.
Right.
And it was atrocious. Like there was so much noise going on in the background. But you don't try it, you don't know, do you? I mean, you can guess.
No.
See how bad it is.
You hear it on the radio, don't you? So I listen to Radio 1 quite a lot because I'm driving a van like all day on a Friday. And you hear, they go out on location and there's some background music going on and there's some like noise and stuff like that. But this is maybe a bit more intense than that.
Well, it's all texture.
They probably have a sound engineer who can isolate all the different sounds and ramp some down and all that sort of stuff.
Well, I'm hoping that these mics generally pick us up more than the background.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm going to do the climate change question.
Sure.
So I mean, largely this is what the business is about anyway. So, yeah, the question is around what can you do in your work to raise awareness or contribute to adaptation, mitigation. Like your whole business is that, pretty much.
Yeah. That's exactly it. But it's about knowing the truth. So you've got to be open about composting releases carbon. But it's not much.
Yeah, I'm not a carbon neutral business.
Yeah, correct. I'm not. Yeah, and that's whenever I see we're a carbon neutral business, like the skeptic in me comes out big time.
How is that? Oh, is it offsetting?
Yeah, exactly. And you can't plant enough trees to offset your carbon emissions every year. We just do not have the land for it. It's physically impossible. All sorts of questions come up. Until the tree is 4 years old, it doesn't really sequester much carbon. It's like negligible. So you plant a tree, but if it's a sapling, you can't take the credits for that. How do you protect that land? So if you've planted a forest, how do you stop it from being ripped down in perpetuity? You can't. All these questions. So yeah, I'm very, very skeptical. But I think, and this is why I think we need to look at the data, we need to make decisions based on the facts, we need to remove emotions from it, and we need to be very, very factual and honest about how we operate as a society and a community. And I think we need to move away from markers like GDP. Why 3% growth? Why is that a magic number? What's wrong with 1%?
Because economists decided, and the economists that got funded were the ones that got to say it and print it, and then we all have to do it because they're the high priests of, made up science.
Money that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
exactly.
with models that don't have money and banks in them.
I mean, that's the classic, isn't it? We're going into recession. We'll just print more money. Okay, great, well done. How much did we pay you to make that decision? Oh, a couple of million. Okay, fine. We need to be more honest about what we're doing, and I think our focus needs to shift. Growth is growth. If it's 1% growth, then that's okay. I mean, I'm not an economist, so I'm probably being quite naive here.
But it depends what the growth is for. I mean, the whole point is like you grow the pie so everyone gets more.
Yeah.
So, and it's that lifting, rising tide, lift all boats, all those kind of.
Yeah, but COVID already established that the wealth gap in the UK is significant, and that actually we're not levelling up. No one's levelling up, and there's still no levelling up between the north and the south.
Yeah, and it's not like anyone actually knows what the growth is. It's like it's one of those things where the media talk about this thing as if it's important, then occasionally people talk about it. And it's like, well, it's not like we know every year. It's not like we go, oh, right, the growth this year has been 3.5, 2.1, 1.2, 0.01. Like, nobody knows this. I mean, you can look it up, you can find it out, but it's not like, oh, right, well done, everyone. We've been working all year and we've achieved this.
Yeah. I mean, well, they do publish those figures, though, don't they? They do. And I don't quite know how they come up with those figures, but what happens when everybody is at the same level? So we moved all of our call centres to India because the cost is cheaper. But now the average wage in India is increasing, as it should do, because that's the whole point, right? That's what the government there is trying to do. They're trying to get everybody out of the slums. They're trying to raise everybody's standard of living, and they are basically saying we are now a major economy. America, Europe, take us seriously, and that's exactly what they should be doing. What happens when everyone's on an equal footing? We only live on one planet. Our economy is global. Where do we go from there? What are we going to do? How are we going to grow markets? How are we going to expand? How are we going to increase GDP?
Mine asteroids.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what the recent moon landings is all about.
But I mean, but if you just look at the calorie calculation of that, of the amount of energy that it takes just to get off the planet, right, and how much damage that does. There is no physical way that you can, like, not with the science and the physics we have at the moment. You can't. It's just not viable. It's a ridiculous idea. You know?
Well,
It's like,
yeah,
maybe you will. Maybe you'll get your giant space elevator or whatever. But I don't see it.
well, you've got the other thing is as well. You've got all of these geopolitical factors that you've got to take into account. So, if you take off from the equator, you use significantly less energy than you do if you take off from the Tropic of Cancer or whatever it is. You know. But if you look at all the countries that are based in the equator, they're very unstable. So launching a rocket from there is actually
And they're
quite
going to be
difficult.
unlivable. It will be unlivable. Like people, you won't be able to. So I mean, there's a degree in which we're doing space exploration on our own spaceship Earth because through the process of geoengineering it, which is what we're doing, even though it's unplanned.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, we're going to have live, real test case experiments of like. Here's huge, because there's already huge areas of the land surface that are inhospitable to humans.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things where we just think, we can live anywhere. We just put on a magic suit and we can live where it's like, no, you will die.
yeah. Good luck in the Sahara.
Yeah. Or
I'll give you 7 days.
Yeah.
At best.
Yeah.
But it's we are slightly insane, and we're never happy with what we've got, and we're programmed this way.
But a lot of that's artificial need as well, though.
Well, it's the media telling you need it. You know, you need to have the big house, you need to have the 2 cars, you need to have all
You need
the white
to keep
goods.
consuming because otherwise the economy will stop working.
Yeah, we're terrified. We're absolutely terrified that the economy is going to collapse, and rightly so. But do we have to have an economy that's constantly growing? Can we not have an economy that just maintains what we do? And can we not focus more on being happy and having a goal? We were talking earlier on that lots of people mental health issues are on the increase. Not just because of COVID. I think COVID maybe
Exacerbated it.
brought it to the fore as to how unhappy people were, because
also it brought up a lot of trauma for people as well, and like health concerns and other things. So there was a lot,
Well, what it also highlighted was how many people, and this is a phrase out on YouTube, how many people actually had a bullshit job, because all of a sudden they weren't needed, and it was really obvious that you were not needed.
Yeah.
Other people were needed, but you're sitting there going, what do I do? How can I contribute? You don't. And I think that made people question the value of what they do, and that then in turn made them question who they were and what contribution they had. And I think that was a huge thing for people.
And it's part of the calculation. Like it's one of the. This is why I'm still talking about COVID, and I am keeping it in. There was a point at which I think I was debating dropping it, but I think we nowhere near touched on dealing with that. And there are huge things like we'll see in this election cycle and stuff. There's still stuff coming out and to come up and to be dealt with and processed, and like we're going to have the whole thing of eventually we'll get to a point where, on this kind of, if we have a normal trajectory sort of thing, as normal as anything can be now, but there will be a point where it'll be like, long COVID actually is a thing. Yeah, okay. Loads of people have got this debilitating thing that has caused all sorts of other problems and so on. Because you saw it with COVID when it happened, there was that whole it's not real, it's not a real thing, it's all made up, and to a degree afterwards. But you always get that of with health concerns, people are like, you're making it up.
No, I still can't smell.
Yeah.
I'm not making that up.
Why would I?
Yeah.
Oh, for attention. How desperate for, I could just take my clothes off and shout if I just wanted attention,
That's
like...
Right. Yeah. Oh, could you punch you in the face?
Yeah.
It's just one of
I
those
don't
things.
have to make up illnesses to get attention.
I don't have to tell you I can't taste my food.
Yeah.
This is totally. It's there's so. I think what I've realised recently is that we as human beings need to have a purpose, and having employment gives us a purpose. But is it a false purpose? And again, is it a false purpose that's designed to support this thing called the economy? And lots of people are defined by their jobs. So everybody says, I don't work. I don't live to work. I work to live. It's not true. Most people live to work, because actually it's the thing you do other than sleep more than anything else, more than being a parent, more than being a friend, more than being a partner, more than being anything. Sleep and work, and if you're working enough, maybe not even sleep, but working too much rather, not even sleep. So it does define you as a person. So people get very attached to what they do, and then when they suddenly find out that actually it's a bit of a bullshit job, and all you're doing is shuffling paper from here to there, and you hand in a report and nothing really happens, and if you don't hand in the report, no one comes and tells you off or gives you a disciplinary, you've got to start questioning whether you're actually contributing something that's worthwhile, or whether you're just this tiny cog in a machine that's supporting this thing called the economy. And what I've realised.
And you're a tiny cog that could just fall off and it wouldn't even stop the machine from working.
Yeah. And we all know that we got run over by a bus tomorrow. Whatever organisation you work in will go, oh, that's sad. Bob's gone,
Put an advert up.
Yeah, we'll put an advert up and we'll replace it. Him or, Bobette, whoever,
Or not. If we can save on that expense.
Yeah, we all know that. So we need to start looking at what is actually valuable, and that's why I like running the business that I run. One of the things I want to do is I want to employ people with learning difficulties, because I believe they're a section of society that are just getting shafted all the time. So I have a guy who works for me, he's a fantastic worker. I mean, he just does not stop, he's brilliant. He's got dyspraxia, and that manifests itself in quite a few different ways. So he struggles with depth perception, he struggles with things that you might term as common sense, so like end of conversations. He doesn't quite know when to leave, to say goodbye or things like that. So you have to change the way that you behave, and the way that you communicate, and the way that you do things. And it's been a valuable process for me as an individual. I'm a far better communicator now because I employed someone with dyspraxia than I was before. And I thought I was a good communicator before, but now I'm actually really good.
There's always more to learn.
Always, and it's been really, really valuable. But the thing with people with learning difficulties is people will take them on a voluntary basis, and they'll have them doing work all day long as they don't have to pay them. But then at the moment a paid job comes up, they suddenly don't get the job. Someone without learning difficulties gets the job. They've been doing it for years. Well, what's the difference? Why? And it happens all the time, and it burns my ass.
Well, you see it with a lot of these interns as well, and charities and NGOs and stuff. Like I saw a thing on LinkedIn today, the UN were asking for some interns for something, and I just know, maybe it's not the case, I might be wrong, but my prejudice is that all of those people that do that, none of them will get a job out of it, because the jobs that are coming out of that, they've already been picked for people. We've got people who are coming out of Harvard or whatever who we want them, but we'll take your free work doing this, and you get to say you worked at the whatever organisation.
And you can put that on your CV, and that will increase your employability.
And that's enough. That's value for you. Off you go. No matter that you could do the job and you did it, we're not going to employ you for it.
And this is one of the things that I've realised is you don't have to do that. You don't have to play that game. And one of the things I like about running my own business and being my own boss is I'm actually more accountable to my employee than I am probably anybody else, because as a result of working for me, he now is thinking about doing his driving test. He's 25. So he's now has that aspiration and ambition, because that's going to give him more freedom. He's wanting to buy his own place. And now I'm thinking, well, if I don't make this work, he buys his own place and he gets into a mortgage situation. If I don't make this work, he's not going to be able to pay his mortgage, and that will be my fault. So that's quite scary. It's an awful lot of responsibility. But what a great motivator to keep you working. I'm not motivated by the money now, I'm motivated by the people that work for me.
It's your obligation to others.
Yeah, and it's my obligation to society, and that is part of society now. I'm helping someone who struggled to find employment because of his dyspraxia, to then progress and contribute to society, just like anybody else would. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? I think business has that responsibility to the community that it is based in. I think there's a perception that businesses are businesses and they'll make money no matter what. But actually, if your community decides they don't want your business or they don't like your business
All the
will-
market
your business will
conditions
fail.
change. Your product goes out of fashion. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. So businesses are there to support communities, and this whole thing about the economy. If you go, the Greeks invented the economy, but the eco was all about home, and it was about supporting the home. It wasn't about supporting the country. And I think that's what I like about being a small business, or a micro business actually. Is I like the fact that I am having an impact on individuals and their contribution and helping them contribute to the society that we live in within Leeds, and I really like that. And I can make it more personal. You're not just a number in an organisation of 10,000 people. You know, it's more than that. And I think we have a responsibility to do that. And I think if anyone who's listening to this thinks, oh yeah, maybe I have got a bullshit job, then maybe you should dive into a business and maybe you should find a purpose elsewhere. You're not going to be rich.
Yeah.
To start
But
with.
at least you'll be using your own efforts for yourself, not for someone else, and you'll be doing a project that you want to do, not somebody else's project.
And that should make you happy.
Yeah.
And if you're happy, that is the most important thing. You know, the moment something is driving you, where you become a slave to it and you're not happy, you've got to think about stop doing that thing. You know?
So I'm going to go into the next question, which is the change question. So if you could change any three things about your work, so you can be realistic and pragmatic, you can be totally fantastical. But yeah, if you could change any three things about your work, what would you change?
Well, I've already said we need to get bigger. You've just got to do more of it. More of it. I need bigger facilities. I need to be able to just process all of the food waste in Leeds. You know, that's what I want to do, without a doubt. You know. I would. Yeah, I think I definitely want the YouTube channel to take off, because I quite like the idea of that paying for me to do composting. I like that idea. I'm all right with that actually. If that subsidises, if one subsidises the other, and I don't have to go to a bank, that's okay for me. I would like that to happen, and it's insane amounts of money potentially, you know, in YouTube. Just off the back of advertising, I'd like that advertising capitalist thing to pay for my composting environmental initiative. You know?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then I want to, this is a goal of mine anyway, I want to employ more people with learning disabilities. So there's got to be a certain amount of machinery and automation in what I do, but I want the people who run those machines and are in charge of that automation to have learning difficulties. You know, I want to give people with learning difficulties meaningful employment, where they get a fair day's wage for a fair day's work, you know, and like I said before, contribute to society. So I think those would be the three big things.
Yeah. How long do you think before you've got all of Leeds food waste?
Yeah, I haven't got a clue. Don't know.
I mean, like you might realise it sooner than you think. I mean, you might not. It might be one that you chase for ages, but you might realise it sooner than you think. At that point, would you have a plan beyond that? Because I'm thinking, like, how much can you grow? So even if say the sales take off, you're doing really well on like an online shop selling stuff, would it be just a matter of, I'm only going to sell within the UK or just Yorkshire or something like that, where you're kind of like, you're setting limits to yourself? Or would you want to be like, no, we expand this model all over the world and I'm now...
Yeah. See, that's the thing about principles, isn't it? Is you have to stand by them, and principles cost money.
I mean, the other thing is, I think with some of these sustainable businesses ideas, and I've mentioned this before, it's franchising, because of like, yeah, we'll give you the knowledge, we'll give you the kit, we'll give you the branding. You
Yeah.
you buy that from us, and off you go.
Yeah, I think franchising would be a good thing, but I think going back to what we were saying before, so carbon, climate change, making information based on facts and figures and decisions based on that, and then also not being motivated by money. I think I would want to grow to process all of the food waste in Leeds. I would want all of that compost to go back into Leeds. I would, 44% of our land is farmland, so I want it all to go back into that 44%. I want all of that food to be grown and sold in Leeds. I want the Leeds population to then eat that food. I'd like all that food to be, organic, no pesticides, petrochemical-based fertilizers, all that sort of stuff. That's what I would like to do. I'd like to be part of that very circular thing. I think you probably couldn't make enough compost to do that and go to Europe, and I think even if you did, I wouldn't want to go abroad, because what's the point in producing something that has a very low carbon footprint and then sending it halfway across the globe and increasing the footprint? That doesn't make any sense to me.
But it's the way that the market thinks.
Well, that's where the principles come
Yeah.
into it. You either decide that you're going to do that and make loads of money, or you're not going to do it and you're not going to make as much money as you could. But what's the point in just making money? I actually don't. I understand the point in providing security for you and your family, and I understand the point in providing some financial security for retirement, and I understand the point in providing some financial security in terms of inheritance for your kids. I get that. But beyond that, how much money do you really need? Even in terms of inheritance, if you leave your kids £20,000, that's a deposit for a house that gets them up and running. They probably don't need any more than that, because any more than that devalues them, because they've got to work themselves, and they've got to understand the sense of pride that comes from work, and they've got to understand how hard it is to get that money. They've also got to understand the value of money. So there's no point giving them 100k, but give them something to help them. Right? So even Bill Gates is only giving these kids $1 billion, because how he's even said himself, how much money do they actually need? So beyond that, what is the point of that money? What's the point of being rich? What's the point in having £10 billion in the bank? What are you going to do with it? And why make more money? Just be happy, enjoy the life that you've got, and enjoy the experience that you've got. And if you are going to make that kind of money, what I would hope I would do is I would actually use that money to help other people, not to be an angel investor, but to actually say, if I could give you 10k, what would you do with that money? And I would pick someone who has been doing it for a fair few years, who keeps good accounts, who's clearly a hard worker, clearly has a sense of purpose, and is clearly contributing to the community and the environment that they live in. And I would say, if I could give you this £10,000, what would you spend it on? And then if they could say, convince me that it's worthwhile, I'd give them 10 grand. I'd walk off, and if they went and pissed up the wall, I'd say, oh well, there you go, I lost 10 grand. I would like to think that's what I would do if I then earned more money than I needed to look after myself and my family. And how big a house do you really need? How many cars do you actually need? You can only drive one at a time. Yeah, correct. So
no, I've got a fleet of self-driving ones. I'm fine.
This is it. Yeah.
So, can you ride in all of them at the same time?
This is it. Yeah. No, I just put my kids in another one, and then they have a separate one each. It's crazy. So and I don't really understand the point of being rich. Really, I understand the point in making money. I understand the point in sustaining yourself.
Well, being financially, being secure, being comfortable, being having faith that your future is generally kind of going to be okay. You're not going to have to. You don't have to worry about being homeless in 5 years, 5 months, 5 weeks, 5 days, 5 hours.
Yeah, correct. So that would be nice. Yeah. Or in 3 pay packets time or something like that. So Yeah, that's kind of the goal in that one. Yeah, I wouldn't sell internationally. I don't think. Maybe sell a franchise internationally and say, you know, this is the model. This is
Well,
how
that's
we
it.
do
You've got the knowledge now, and I suppose that like you could. It could be a whole social media sort of thing of like how to do it, how I've done it, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's lots of room for you to manoeuvre and do different things.
Yeah.
But it also keeps it in that realm of doing things because you're interested in doing them, rather than I have an economic need, or like I'm pushed by economic forces into having to do this.
Yeah, and I think also what you've got to say to yourself is how much work do I actually want to do?
Exactly.
At some point, I want to live, and actually, is it on Instagram or? It's on one of the socials, whatever. There's a guy saying work-life balance is bullshit. There should be no balance. You know, it should be about life. And I don't want to be working 60 hours a day to do franchises in America or whatever, just because it's earning me more money. Actually, what I want to do is I want to enjoy my life. I want to spend more time with my kids. I want to, if they get married, I want to spend more time with my grandkids. And that's. It's about happiness and what makes you happy, and I think just working your ass off doesn't really make you happy.
Well, no, and just making yourself happy doesn't make you happy, because if you've just made yourself happy, you're on all the happiest pills ever, and everyone else around you is miserable.
Yeah.
What's the value in that happiness? I'm doing bunny quotes for the audio. But, like, what's the value in it then? No value. Like, happiness is contingent as well. It's about the people around you, you know. Like, poverty is relative, so is happiness, you know. Like, it's...
Some of the poorest people are the happiest people.
Yeah, and happiness
and
is about...
Who's the fool there? Yeah, I've got no money.
The fool that follows the fool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the last question, which is the UBI question. So if there was a universal basic income, I'm assuming you know what that means because you've been in this kind of area for a while, so I'm just assuming you're familiar with it. So you can take this question a few ways. I would imagine it wouldn't make that much difference to you, that you would still do what you're doing, you would do it as much, maybe you would plan things a little differently. But yeah, how do you think it would change things for you?
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier on, if I could give someone 10 grand, that would probably be very useful. And there's been lots of times, I'm sitting here thinking now, I'd quite like 10 grand for a mini digger. And then if someone came along and gave me 10 grand for a mini digger, that would be amazing. I'd do it. And universal basic income is basically that someone coming along and say, here's a load of cash to do that. And so, that'd be spent instantly. Well, I watched a YouTube video about the same guy who was talking about bullshit jobs, and I just can't remember.
David Graeber.
Is that it? Yeah. Kind of youngish chap, glasses.
He's gone now.
He's gone?
Yeah, he died in 2020.
You're joking?
No.
What from?
Very sad. I don't know entirely, but yeah, he's died in 2020. I don't think it was COVID related.
Oh, God.
I think I did read up on it, but yeah, he's passed.
God,
yeah.
right.
Which is a real shame, because his research and books were amazing.
He was really insightful.
Really good.
Really insightful. He was talking about universal basic income. He was saying a bit of a story. He was saying, so what would you do if someone gave you universal basic income, gave you $5,000 a year? And he said, oh well, I'd probably maybe go to university again and use it to tuition fees, or maybe I'd use it to start a small business, or I'd do something like that. So, all right, okay. So what do you think other people will do with the $5,000?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, probably take drugs and get drunk. It says a lot about human nature, doesn't it? But I'm going to do something really altruistic, but everyone else is just going to blow it up the wall. It's not the case. Most people there will be people who will go out and drink it, but there will be lots more people who will use it to buy food for their kids, or whatever it is.
Well, they might do it once, but they probably wouldn't do it again, because they're like, well, that didn't get me anywhere, and I've done that now, so now I'm going to do something.
I just wasted $5,000. Yeah, exactly. So and also. it was interesting helping my son through his GCSEs because he's studying Christmas Carol, and obviously Christmas Carol was in the Victorian times, and there was a view, so they had workhouses then. So if you were in workhouses were used as a disincentive to be poor. It was like, you work hard, make sure you don't go to a workhouse, and then you're going to do well. And it's the same kind of thinking, isn't it? Is that, the attitude at the time was not to support the poor because it would give them no motivation to get out. Yeah. It wasn't seen as help them to get out of that situation. It was seen, if you give them money, they'll be lazy. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. As if the people who have the money are really productive and really smart, productive, really high value people. Yeah. No, you're just people who got lucky, But some of you have worked really hard, but so have other people. And loads of people who have worked really hard aren't really rich.
Yeah, and let's face it, most people who are really, really rich didn't get there without someone helping them.
Yeah.
So the idea that helping someone is somehow going to be degenerative is ridiculous. Help people get out of their situations, help people, support people.
Lift people up, stop pushing people down.
Yeah, exactly. So I think on that basis, I think universal basic income is great. And I think the only caveat I'd have to that is because the way, again, our economies work, and because there are some greedy people out there, is that I do wonder if take, for example, mortgages. Suddenly all of the mortgage providers will go, do you know what? Everyone's got $5,000 more, so we're just going to put our prices up a bit because everyone's got more money. And then that gets swallowed up by that. And that happened with the incentives for electric cars. So the government was giving everybody $4,000 for an electric car. Well, what happened? The car industry put the prices up by $4,000. So net benefit, nothing.
Well, when they did the fees, when they introduced the tuition fees, and they were like, oh no, there's going to be a maximum cap of $9,000. So most people will go under that, and it'll only be in a few cases. No, everyone's going to go for $9,000 because why wouldn't you? Of course, we're going to get $9,000 off the students. Yeah, we're going to have that. But that'll reduce your pool of this, that, and the other. It's like, but we've also got a global pool. It's like, but how long will you have that when you don't invest in the actual infrastructure of it, and all your good lecturers leave, and all, and they all have to become immigration officers and take on a whole new skill set. You've got to train them in the whole being an immigration officer and working in the university.
That was hilarious. That was very naive of the government to say, everyone will vary their prices according to it. No, they won't. Everyone's going to go for top dollar. Thank you, boom. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So I think it would be a good thing, provided there were systems in place to make sure that other people didn't take that money away from people who need it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be a really interesting one if it did get introduced. And I think with the pilots and stuff, it's like, you get some really good information back, but over the long term, what would the changes be of getting used to that? But I think it'd be really valuable. I think we need, at this point, you need something, because we pay this tax, we have these idiots that we all hate and that we have to read about in the news doing the latest ridiculous thing. And what connection do we have to this Britain idea? Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, what do you get out of it? I'm giving everything here. What do I get in return? Oh, you get to live on this dreadful, dreary, rainy island. Hurrah! I think I need something else.
Give me more.
Well, and also to unify us a bit more. It's like, who wants to live in a so-called society where everyone's just competing against each other and no one's helping? No.
And you don't have to do that. And this is one of the biggest things I've realised. So. You don't have to be on that hamster wheel just constantly running around at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's okay to stop and actually just chill out for a little bit, relax.
Yeah, you don't have to, it's like that thing of we're the only animals that have to pay rent to live here.
Yeah. It's that Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy quote, isn't it, about dolphins?
Yeah.
which says, a man laughed at dolphin because he had a fast car and a big house and loads of money. Dolphin laughed at man because he just swam around and had sex all day. Who's got it wrong?
Yeah. So that's all my questions done. So this is the point where I throw it over to you. So first of all, if you give us your socials, where can people find you and
Yeah, so Instagram, Facebook, website, and YouTube.
do you know the links, or is it just
It's basically
Plate
just
to Plate?
plate. It's just Plate 2 Plate Compost,
Yeah.
and it's a number 2, not TWO or TOO or anything like that. And on the Instagram and Facebook, all one word. Website, it's just www.plate2platecompost.com.
Cool.
And then YouTube again is Plate to Plate Compost. Managed to bag that one.
Yeah, that's. I mean, yeah. Once you've got your idea, first thing to do, mark your social media territories.
That's it. Yeah. Blue tick.
Then do your research.
That's right.
Because you can always delete the channel.
Yeah. Or sell it.
So, yeah, that's all my questions. Is there anything at this point you want to talk about or highlight, anything that we haven't covered that you want to touch upon? Don't have to, but yeah,
No, it's fine. It's nice to talk and just express the world according to Mark Warner is quite nice. It'd be interesting to see if anyone agrees. It's like, who is this guy? He's crazy.
It will be interesting. But yeah, they don't tell me. The listeners that are there, they're just like, I don't know.
Oh, well, that's what they need. That's what it is. Please provide comments below.
Engage.
Yeah, let's hear your voice.
All right, well, thank you very much for doing this, Mark. I'm going to stop that there. Thank you again to Mark for being my guest and to Eat Your Greens for hosting us. Thanks, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. Okay, that's me. I'll be seeing you.